Mr. Kanye West and his friend Nick Fuentes, who are, currently on a tour. I believe that Kanye claims that he is running for president in 2024, and I think that both of them went to Mar-a-Lago to ask Donald Trump to be Kanye's vice president, if you can believe it. So fascinating. Such an interesting turn of events. He is mixed heritage, like many of us, but he is, was in California yesterday or a day ago and got into an altercation at the local In-N-Out Burger where Nick Fuentes is pictured and I believe video recorded throwing a Sprite at a couple that did not support his anti-POC and anti-Semitic and other kind of difficult opinions. Not a good look, Mr. Nick Fuentes. You're not helping Kanye with his presidential bid. I'm sure we're all very excited about the prospect of the free world being led by Kanye West. It's not unusual that some prominent people of Latino descent enjoy taking on the cloak of the master and being either, anti-Latino. There have been some disturbing videos on TikTok of, people of either Central American or Mexican descent using slurs against other Latino or Central American people, calling them wetback, meaning that they were recent immigrants, as opposed to the people using these slurs saying that, oh, well, I was born here, right? All these people are just so eager to find some higher status that differentiates them so that they're not really Latino. They're more like non-people of color or oppressors. And it's just such an interesting psychology. It's like, when certain ethnic groups get involved in law enforcement, sometimes there is this like mental gymnastics where they will be even harder on members of their own community because they have to, prove how blue they are or how, what is the border patrol? I went to a wedding of a Latino man who is part of border patrol and I thought, ooh, how ironic. Because, the fact that the American border is where it is a little bit random because there were people of indigenous descent who were there before. So how can you tell them suddenly that they don't belong on this or that side of a random border? But we've had some incidents here in Los Angeles with several Latinx, I guess you say, members of the city council. The president of the city council, Nuri Martinez, as well as city council members Kevin De Leon and Gil Cedillo. And then there was separately another labor leader that they were all audio taped and perhaps videotaped talking about, sort of topics of anti-blackness, including calling the adopted black son of another city council member, Mike Bonin, calling him a monkey and talking about indigenous Mexicans who are from a region called Oaxaca, kind of saying that they're sort of ugly and dark and not I guess respectable, embraceable Latinx people like them. Help me out here because it's just ironic, right? That you can say like white supremacy, but white people aren't the only people who believe in white supremacy or supremacy or, I think it's interesting the analysis where people say, even in the black community, there's black people who are like, oh, you're not really black, you're not from America, or you're not really black, you're not from Africa, or you're not really black because you're not my complexion, or all that kind of stuff. But it's not a quest for equality. It's a quest for privilege. It's a quest to find some advantage that adheres to your identity, your look, your color, but, isn't something that's readily available and shared with everyone, right? Like, what is it? Margaret Thatcher said during the Reagan era, opportunity is not opportunity if it is equal. So you can kind of see baked into our economic system the idea that not everyone should have the same opportunities or be equal, because then, you know, how could we get away with things? Feel free to let me know your opinion. But today's makeup look, I think, turned out really, really good. We did some underpainting with various items. We got into a set of bronzers from our friends at Walmart who carry this Uoma Sharon C. Beauty Flawless in Real Life bronzer in the color High Definition. This is the darkest color that I could get my hands on. And then, in that old school way, I went in with this L'Oreal Paris Star Glow Sheer Cream Eyeshadow in 24 Karat Twilight. Let me open it so you can see. It's just a very shimmery, kind of bone white eyeshadow. And so I underpainted this along the bridge of the nose, tip of the nose, tops of the cheekbones, Cupid's bow, above and below the brow arch, right? Then I contoured with this bronzer that happily wasn't super red or super warm. It worked out great. I also went in with this Maybelline Master Camo color correcting kit, and I used the yellow color correcting shade to lighten all the light places. So when I did all that underpainting, I then went in with MAC Studio Radiance Face and Body in the shade W3, right? Which I was afraid might be too cool for me, because the MAC color concept is that the letter is the opposite of what you are. So since this is W3, it's warm, meaning it's for people who have cool toned skin. I know it's counterintuitive, but it worked out great because it was sheer, went over my skin and all these other products, and I think it looks fantastic. Then I used some Avani Gregg with Morphe bronzer in the shade Hawaii, right? It's the Vacation Luminous Bronzer, so it has some reflect in it as eyeshadow to enhance my nose contour, a little bit on the cheeks, but just to create an overall color unity so there's no surprise colors popping up on the face. I went into this, which is incredible. It is the e.l.f. Hyper Shine Gloss, and I don't know a shade name, but it's sort of a peachy pink, and it really is a Hyper Shine Gloss. And then I used a flat angled brush, right, something super sharp, to stroke into this Wet n Wild Idle Eyes cream shadow pencil in the shade Graphite. This is one of my, I've had this for as long as I've had makeup, and used it to create inner and outer corner flick and to thicken the lash line, and I think it came out really fantastic. It does tend to be a smudgy product, so I'm just looking and expecting it to wander around my face, but you know, for a quick live on TikTok, I think it did just great, and I think it looks great, and I thought it looked great in the tutorial as well as the thumbnail for this video. I'm just wearing some random hair pieces that I got at the dollar store. It's like this braided headband, and then this, which is like a it's like a rubber band that's just around my own bun. So it looks fluffy and festive and a braid like I'm one of the Targaryens, but without having to actually braid my own hair. So that's the victory for today. I didn't do any more of an elaborate eyeshadow, and I'm a little bit sad about that, but I did want to make sure to hop on here and talk about, you know, this trending anti-blackness, anti-Latinx kind of mind and anti-Semitism. I mean, it's just shocking to hear Kanye West, Nick Fuentes, and several other people be so anti-Semitic when we know all of this, you know, Holocaust didn't happen talk has been debunked. It just, they've been radicalized. Maybe they've been bribed, allegedly, in my opinion, because I can't figure out what Kanye West thinks he's going to get out of doing all this. Like, you're a black man. What is all this? Why are you fighting these, you know, sort of white supremacist people's fight? My theory is that he may have, in the course of his marriage, have signed away businesses and assets to his ex-wife's family, and that he is interested in scuttling them. So if he can't profit from that he signed away, gave away, they can't either, because he's going to ruin the brands. Does this sound completely off the wall? I know it does. But what other logic could there be? Someone who, sang so aggressively about don't want a gold digger, but to me, he turns out to be the gold digger because he married into a family that helped him just as he was, losing people of talent, scuttling and bankrupting his own businesses, violating labor laws here in California. It's no good. You can't do that. And I think that, the Kim K family is savvy enough to know when it's time to run for the hills. And, hopefully the children and both of them and their families will be fine. But, in my opinion, Kanye is like losing it. He is not being businesslike. He is not being smart. He is not being constructive. He is destroying his own brand and reputation and canoodling with these troublesome people who encourage people to get irrational and perhaps even violent in pursuit of their opinions. It's fine for you to have your opinion. Keep your hands to yourself, keep your weapons to yourself. But, the tragedy in Colorado, like so many other domestic terrorist tragedies, they're uncalled for, except that you have people like Nick Fuentes, people like Kanye, whipping people up who are in desperate mental and other circumstances, who are ready to, who was that fella that was screaming up in Oregon about race war because he had some sort of issue at the airport? These are the people in the neighborhood. Yes, we got to be careful, right? It might be time for, what is it called? This to come back in California. And, given hospitalization rates and given real risk, I think that's appropriate. It's always time to be careful. And, seeing Nick Fuentes throw a Sprite at people who did not agree with him in In-N-Out Burger, which is a popular casual dining restaurant here in Southern California, it just lets you know how childish and violent and dangerous people who think like this are. They're not trying to be rational. They're not trying to be Christian with an uppercase C. They are quite desperate to be right, and they're not right. And we've seen this all before. All of this, anti-Semitism, anti-Blackness, anti-Indigenous, all of this thinking ultimately leads to violence and loss of life. It's just not good enough. And it needs to be sanctioned and it needs to be stopped. I mean, how can you deny the Holocaust? Are you insane? Can you not read and acknowledge history and historical sources? Do you need a library card? Or are you in some echo chamber with, nutty people who want, the same people who want you to believe the earth is flat and that, the global panini was a hoax and, you can't get pregnant the first time and, what is it called? Old wives' tales and superstitions. It all goes in the same basket of not being real, not being true, not being credible, and not being sane. And, it's just a shame that we have to tolerate and coddle these people. But on to the Shanquella Robinson saga. It's still not clear that anyone has been arrested for that poor 25-year-old traveler's demise in Cabo. And there have been discussions about, perhaps jealousy over PPP loans and, business success for her as opposed to her other friends. It's all just a jumble of hearsay and opinions, but in the middle of all of that, a young woman lost her life. And I just encourage everyone to think about, those signals that people who are your so-called friends, certainly your colleagues, and sometimes your, lovers and suitors give you signals that they don't respect you. They say things, they laugh at you, make jokes at your expense. All those little signals are there to just sprinkle in a little seasoning called this person isn't on your side, right? People who try to undermine you emotionally. People who, they can talk behind your back, kind of whatever, but not whatever when it's getting a whole group of people perhaps to plot on you out of the country, especially if it's true that Shanquella Robinson footed the bill for the villa and the chef, and these people simply didn't want to pay her back and were trying to teach her a lesson and maybe took it too far. That's a theory. It is never in your interest to hang out with people who are in a position to be jealous of you. I hate to say it, but if people aren't on your level, they're not achieving and they're not doing things in their lives, and they're fronting, they're covering up their personal despair and their personal rage over you doing better than them, you doing fine, you looking fine, whatever that's about, what you look like, your health and fitness, who your lover is, what kind of car you're driving, how loving your parents are, all kinds of things can trigger low lives to want to low life on you. And I just want to encourage you, like the smallest signals, the meanest jokes, the group chats that you're left out of, people trying to control how you talk, how you text, trying to put you in some second class citizen position. Those are the red flags. Those are the red flags that are going to tell you that if there's a situation where it comes down to money or safety or, these are the same people who might want to put something in your drink or in your pre-roll. They are not going to help you if you get in trouble with an Uber driver or a blind date or someone you met on Tinder. It's hard to fathom because you would not be that way to them, but not everyone is a friend the way that you are, and not everyone is someone who's capable of loving like you do, caring like you do, helping like you do. There are a lot of people who are, unfortunately, going to express their dislike of you in dangerous ways. And I think the lesson of Shanquella Robinson is like, stay woke, tune in, pay attention to all the subtle signals and details that could tell you that someone is faking it, faking the friendship, faking the love, faking the, birthday, all this stuff. I certainly have been around the bend with a bunch of people, that I've been forced to work with who it was top to bottom game that they were running. And, in many ways, all of this is coming to a head in the next few days. And I'm very much interested in laying low. People get irrational around the holidays. There's just difficult emotions that people deal with when they see other people succeeding or being in relationships or, having human dignity. And they don't think that you necessarily deserve to have human dignity. I hate to say it, but this is what's real. Our jails are full of people who thought that A, they could do anything they wanted, and B, they could get away with it. And there have to be consequences for loss of life. There have to be consequences for theft. There have to be, because, without control, without rules or laws, our society would just be chaos. But, it just lets you know that margin where these aren't the first people to go to Mexico and try to get away with, quote, an accidental demise. They aren't the first people who thought that they were slicker than grease and no one would ever figure it out. But, not many people make videos of incidents on site of possible crimes. So I look forward to this being sorted out between the American and the Mexican authorities. This is just Tanya. These are my opinions here on Sister Says. I invite you to do your own research, debate me, let me know your opinion in the comments. I just want to keep you abreast of what's going on in the world, as well as this makeup look. I'll see you on the next episode.